My daughter is 7 and has just learned to text. I've caught her a few times on the couch with my phone, one finger slowly hunting and pecking across the touch screen. In these moments, my fears grab me around the throat, that she's gone searching for Peppa Pig and instead found clips of tentacle porn. But these worries never come true. She's only taking a selfie because she's eaten a blue popsicle and wants to send a picture of her tongue to my mother-in-law, her grandmother. My mother-in-law is a very responsive texter. It is strange to see these conversations unfold around me, taking place on my phone under my name, but unconnected to me. Look at my tongue. Lovely, dollface. How was school? I'm building a jetpack so I can get ice cream anytime I want. Sounds wonderful. See you later, alligator. My abuelita, my grandmother, never learned to speak English, despite having lived in the United States for almost 50 years. My grandfather coaxed her from the little town in Mexico her ancestors had founded, back when land was granted by the king, and took her 2,000 miles north to Detroit. This was the 1940s, when it was common to find signs in restaurants prohibiting dogs and what I'm assuming the sign printers believed their logical corollary, Mexicans. In the few pictures I have of my abuelita from the years she spent in Detroit, she's never smiling. In each photo, she looks tired and put upon, as though she's finally found a moment when the dishes were finished and the children were content and her husband wasn't shouting for another beer, and then someone had come shattering her happy seclusion, demanding she smile for the camera. Some people can't hide their emotions. Some people won't. By the time I met her, she was a hunched figure with skin the texture of a medjool date. She wore cheap slippers and mint green house dresses that hung on her like pillowcases. She'd gone back south to Laredo, Texas, and my family had followed, moving into her old house while she relocated to an apartment complex for independent seniors. Every Saturday for 8 years, my father and I visited my abuelita at her apartment. She and my father sat at the kitchen table and did not get up until 2 hours had passed. They never laughed. I don't know what they were talking about, but it was never anything funny. And in 8 years of weekly visits, I can remember only one instance of my abuelita speaking directly to me. My daughter is currently obsessed with jokes. What do you call a bear in the rain? A drizzly bear. My children spend the night at my in-laws' house about twice a month. In the mornings, they get into bed with my mother-in-law and read joke books aloud. Where do pencils go on vacation? Pennsylvania. I imagine this goes on for quite a while, and my mother-in-law, with an endurance far superior to mine, will laugh or pretend to laugh at every punchline. A long time from now, I hope my daughter remembers these mornings. She was loved and valued so much she could reread the same horrible joke 1,000 times and never reach the limit of her grandmother's affection. Someday she may feel the world's teeth closing around her neck, and I hope she carries this memory in her pocket like a scrap of velvet to stroke with her thumb. I don't know why my abuelita never learned English. Maybe she didn't have to. Detroit was heavily segregated, and when she left Detroit, she moved to Laredo. And when she left Detroit and moved to Laredo, it would have been effortless to live in Texas, a stone's throw from Mexico, and never utter a word of English. Perhaps she resented my grandfather for making her leave Mexico. Was shunning English her way of clutching tightly to the door frame, feet planted, refusing to be pushed any further inside? She never learned English, and I never learned Spanish. My father married my mother, a white woman, and I was born in 1982. He's never said it, but I think it was a relief to him when I came out the spitting image of my mother. Pale skin, gray-blue eyes, a short Scandinavian nose. He never spoke Spanish in the house, and this seemed a conscious choice. If you're white, you're all right. This is what he says he learned in Detroit. Was my father trying to protect me from something, or was he protecting something for himself, unwilling to share? When I was 7, my mother went into labor with my brother, and I needed somewhere to sleep while my parents were at the hospital. I was nervous about staying at my abuelita's. What would we do? What would we talk about? It was strange in her apartment at night. My abuelita had only the kitchen light on, and it was too feeble to reach into the corners. It made me feel as though she wished I would go to sleep, even though it was barely past 7. Her novellas were on, a constant background of women arguing in rapid Spanish, cut with violins and an occasional cheerful ad for Bisquick. Still, she didn't talk. She sat at the kitchen table smoking more cigarettes and cutting coupons for soap, and I was keenly aware of my intrusion into her life. I was a voyeur, taking in something not meant for consumption. And rather than fight the silence, I fell into mimicry, moving through my play without sound, reflecting her solitude and magnifying it, two people standing on opposite shores. At some point, I must have said, "I'm hungry," and she understood. She reached in her pantry and pulled out a can of off-brand SpaghettiOs. "Quieres spaghetti?" I nodded. She heated it on the stovetop. In 5 minutes, I had my dinner. "Do you want spaghetti?" In 8 years, this is the only sentence I can recall my grandmother having ever said to me. I'm not even sure it was a question. If I had answered no, I don't believe she would have offered an alternative. And the SpaghettiOs, did she eat them herself, complementing her ration of government cheese? Or had she bought them just for me? I find it hard to picture my father suggesting them, but I find it equally difficult to picture her seeking them out in the store, following the advice of friends or one of the pitchmen on Univision. There are times I think I want too much. Wasn't it enough to have food and shelter, to not be beaten with a wooden spoon? And there are other times I look at my daughter and my mother-in-law and wonder what the hell was wrong with my abuelita. I believe I slept on the pull-out couch. For once, the novellas were turned off. I wonder what my children would do if they'd grown up with my abuelita. Would they hug her, hide from her, sing and dance circles around her until she'd finally capitulate to their noisy love and join in? I don't think any of those things would happen. I think we're molded by the love we receive. Exuberant love produces people who love exuberantly. People who step out of their solitude only long enough to cook a meal produce people who save the best of themselves for themselves, dying with their secrets sitting atop their tongue like a pearl. One day I hope to be a grandmother, and maybe I won't share a language with my grandchildren. Maybe they'll look nothing like me. I won't recognize their strange faces peering up at me, sticky hands tugging at my clothes, bare feet squeaking on the tile floor. They'll say 50 words too quickly for me to catch, and I'll be tired because I'll be old, and I'll pick up a magazine instead of trying to be their friend. They will know where I keep the cookies. And I'll have the television tuned to the English language station because my husband is dead and I like to hear the men talk. And the children will grow bored in my small apartment, and I'll only remember the times my own children played quietly by themselves, and I'll be angry thinking that something has gone awry in society when children expect to be entertained. And there is only me in the apartment, and why should I cook for only myself? And the van is broken, and no one remembers to take me to the grocery store, and all I have is this can of SpaghettiOs. Or I will remember how my mother-in-law used to kiss my daughter on her stomach when she was small and sit on the floor endlessly cutting hearts out of red construction paper. I will remember how her love poured from her like Ganymede with his bottomless pitcher, and even though I might secretly long for the moment their mother will pick them up, I will answer their questions as best I can, slip them pieces of candy before dinner, glue together the things that have come apart. We are molded not only by the love we receive, but also by the love we witness that comes to us indirectly. I have seen an abuelita who knows how to smile. I hope that one day my memories of the two abuelitas will merge, become one, take on the stylized nostalgia of an old photograph, a kind brown face, a cotton house dress, and a smile. I want my memories to become a collage of abuelitas, jokes and novellas and spaghetti and red paper hearts and I love you and te amo, taped onto cardboard like an ofrenda. When you step back, you can only see the good parts.